Hi, welcome everybody to Reality Speaks TV. It's me, Sparkle, and with all my co-hosts, you see my lovely co-host today. Just want to welcome everybody to this Sunday, May 26th, 2024. And just wanted to read everybody before I introduce these lovely ladies to us. Just wanted to introduce our topic for this evening. Thank you for joining us on this SisStar Cipher Vodcast for an essential and an empowering discussion titled Understanding Domestic Violence, Coping, Healing, and Empowering Survivors. In this episode, our panel delves into the complex realities of domestic violence, aiming to shed light on its various forms and persuasive impact. Today, we will explore what domestic violence is, uncover the different forms of abuse, and dispel common myths. Recognizing the signs, learn about the warning signs and red flags that indicate an abusive relationship. We're going to offer some coping strategies. Here's some expert advice and some personal stories on how to cope with the immediate and long-term effects of domestic violence. Healing journeys, discovering the paths to healing and recovery, including all types of therapy, support networks, and self-care practices. Empowerment and advocacy, discuss ways to empower survivors, build supportive communities, and advocate for systematic change. This podcast is not only for survivors, but it's for anyone who wants to understand domestic violence better and support those understand domestic violence and whether how you can seek for knowledge. Excuse me, I'm going to start that sentence over. It's not only for people who have survived domestic violence, but it's for people who would like to understand and support those affected by it. Whether you're seeking knowledge, support, or ways to make a difference, this episode will offer valuable insights and practical advice. Please stay tuned in as we become a part of a compassionate community dedicated to awareness, healing, and empowerment. And I'm happy to say that we have Pastor Angela Carter here today, who is a certified grief counselor, certified by the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals. I got that out the way, ladies. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So I just really have a icebreaker for all of you ladies. I want you to first tell me who you are, how are you feeling today, and also share, just for all of us to get to know each and every one of us better, share a hobby or activity that helps you relax and unwind. So your name, how you feeling today, and share a hobby and activity that helps you relax and unwind. We're going to start with you, Pastor Angela Carter.
Mine, first of all, thank you for having me on your panel today. I am feeling wonderful. I am so happy to be here. My hobby is reading and shopping.
Ah. Okay. I like shopping too. All right. So how about you, Anna? Well, what is your name? How you feeling today? And a hobby activity that helps you to relax and unwind.
And again, thank you, Sparkle, for having me here. So my name is Ana Solano. I'm feeling a little bit tired today. And a hobby to help me unwind is I do reading, I meditate, and yoga to help me relax and unwind.
Ah, yes. And Sister Freddie Hamilton.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this. Um, I am executive director of Rebuilding the Village here in Utica, in Cornhill in particular. And my hobby is, as others have said, reading. And reading on a Sunday morning is a special treat for me. Um, I try to get hold of the New York Times early in the morning, and I spend most of my day on Sunday reading. Um, and reading in particular, I love to read and to learn new things. And that's it. I am a meditator. I've been meditating now for um, at least 35 years. And so that's just a part of my morning and sometimes a part of my evening. I'm getting closer to it being a part of both morning and evening.
Oh, that sounds good. Thank you. And Sister Tioka Muhammad, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me on again. And hey, everyone. It's so good to see your beautiful faces.
Yes.
Um, my name is Tioka Muhammad. And how am I feeling right now? Fabulous and grateful. Very grateful and humble all the time. Um, my hobby, most of y'all know my hobby.
Yes,
I,
yes.
I like to dance. But what I do to unwind is I like to research. So it's not like reading. I don't spend a lot of time like pleasure reading. I can't tell you how many books I've read for pleasure, but I like to research. So I like to do that type of reading, and I like to shop. I think it's turning into like a addiction with this online shopping thing. I'm about to take some of these apps off my phone. So that's me.
And I think everybody knows me by now, but it's Sparkle Anthony. And I really like to, well, some of you ladies said reading. I think I like to listen to read it, so listening to an audio book, like taking long showers, just letting the hot water hit me. Um, and I started doing yoga again. So yes, yoga. I guess deep breathing, getting better as the time go on. And then I want to say this helps me to relax and unwind. I really feel plugged in and tuned in when I'm here on this platform, believe it or not. Um, so I guess that's all we got I just want to welcome you ladies and thank you for coming in. I'm not sure um, what Mike is giving feedback, but the first question that I have for you all, because this is a topic that when I all introduced this topic to you, you all said how important it was, how this is a really good time to talk about it. So let me see. Can everyone just mute their mic until it's time? Because I don't know whose mic is giving the feedback. I apologize for that. The first question that I have for this panel is, what motivated you to participate in this discussion about domestic violence? And if it wasn't so much a motivation, what were your first thoughts when I told you that this was going to be the topic? And for this topic, I want to say thank you, Sister Freddie Hamilton, for offering this topic to me, and then also reminding me that Pastor Angela is the go-to person for this topic. So yes. So what motivated you to participate in a discussion about domestic violence? Or should I start with you, Sister Freddie? What made you just pop out randomly and said, you know what, you should talk about domestic violence?
Well, we work with children and youth in our community at our community center. And domestic violence not only impacts the parent, the person being abused, it impacts the whole family and the whole community. So it's important that we understand it and know it when we see it. Often we don't have the tools to intervene, but it's important for us to learn how to do that. And it takes a loving community to be aware of what can happen, both to the victim, the direct victim, and to the family that's involved, because domestic violence is a well-kept secret for the most part in our community. And often people are suffering from it and just don't have a way out. And so it's important for us to be aware of the things that can happen. And I don't want to monopolize this, but I do want to say that, as when I first came to Utica, I learned from one of my contemporaries here, a lady named Miss Davis. She was talking about the history of the Cosmopolitan Center, and she said to me that what she learned when she was a young girl, and Bessie Hicks was one of the first people that started the Cosmopolitan Center. She said one day they were all having a session, and a woman ran into the center, running away from someone who was um, beating her. And when she ran in, she interrupted their session, but she said, "Help me." And she said, Miss Hicks said, "Go in that back room and don't make any noise." And so she went into the back room, and shortly after, the person who was beating her, the husband, ran in and said, "Did you see my wife come in here?" She said, and with a straight face, Miss Hicks said, "No, we didn't see anybody come in here." And so he went away. And that was, to me, such a blessing for that woman, that she had enough community around her that cared about her and loved her enough to give her protection at a very vulnerable time. So it's important for all of us to know these things happen and to be able to be of help whenever we can.
Thank you. So Anna, I'm going to get to each and every one of you. I'm going in a particular order. Could you please tell me, Anna, what were your thoughts when you heard about the show being about domestic violence, or what motivated you to be a part of this conversation?
So one of the main things that I thought about was just the fact about, like Sister Freddie was saying, the impact that it has on children, right? As well as the mental health impact for both the victim and the children. And it's something that needs to be discussed about, right? I actually work in a foster care system. And so when I work with women who are in domestic violence or have history of domestic violence, um, it's hard sometimes to get through them because they're so stuck in a certain pattern. Um, and then we're seeing how it affects their children, the attachment, right? Mothers need to be attached to their children. They're protectors. And when mom can't protect herself, she can't protect her children, right? And so that's the reason why it's so important to talk about these, because it's prevalent mostly with women. Of course, men experience domestic violence, but with domestic violence, what's in it is also the sexual violence that happens, and it continues to happen. So young girls, right, are seeing this, young boys are seeing this, and they're copying what they're seeing. And so that's how the cycle repeats. So in order for us to break the cycle, we have to talk about it. We have to understand that childhood trauma, that love that was not there. What happens when there's no attachment between parent and child? Domestic violence continues in pregnancy, right? And as a doula, how important it is to protect mothers and to give her the information about that. So it is, and the more that I've learned about myself, and I'm Dominican, gender violence, I think it's found in all cultures.
Yes.
I've learned at an early age, I understood that I was treated differently because I was a girl, right? And the eldest. So there are certain norms or, indoctrination that women receive, right? And they learn this from our culture, they learn it from society. So it's a societal problem. And it bleeds out into society, right? Into work environments, how people show up, how children show up. So it affects everybody. So that's why it's important to talk about it. I was like, I have to jump into this conversation because we want to create a more healing world. And it starts with ourselves, to us to then pass that on to our generation, our kids.
Yes.
So.
Thank you. Sister Tioka Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am. So the first thing that I thought about when you sent the topic, I was like, boy, she's about to educate a community once again. I am fascinated by the topics that you choose or are inspired to choose, because there's so much information that's able to share from so many different perspectives. And I was like, I need to be in that number. I want to be a part of that, because in some way, form, shape, or fashion, we have all been victims of domestic violence. And there's layers to this. There's so many layers to this that some of us, those who are victims, really don't know. Like, you have to know what it is in order to be able to say that I am in a domestic violence situation. And I thought, that's the first thing I thought about. I said, this is an opportunity to let people know it in all its layers. So I'm hoping that we do just that. That was my first thought.
Thank you. And Pastor Angela, what was your first thoughts? Well, what did you think about? And why did you want to join? What motivated you to join this conversation today?
Well, being a survivor myself, one of the things I said when I left my situation, that I wanted to help other women who were going through what I was going through. And because domestic violence is so unique and very difficult sometimes to actually understand. It's like a secret. First of all, you're ashamed. You don't want anyone to really know what you're going through. Mm-hmm. Then it affects the family, the community, the society, the workplace, the health. It have all types of different impact, because if you are constantly abused, you can't go to work, you're calling in. So that is weakening the workforce. Then the family itself, especially when there are children involved. Those children at a very early age develop anxiety, because they don't know what they're going to walk into. They don't know if they're going to be in the middle of the night, be woken up by a argument or screaming from their mother being beaten, or they're not. We talk a lot about women, but there are men that also being abused, but it is more prevalent for a woman. And since we live in a community now where there are so many different cultures, some of the cultures actually don't think that domestic violence is a crime. That's what they've been taught, and that's what they learn. So we have to talk about it to let people know that it's not okay to be abused. When a person is abusing you, it's not love. When a person abuse is all about control and power. When a person has power and control over you, that's not love. So we have to educate people. We have to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, the more we can understand and the more we can help. And it's very difficult sometimes to determine when you see Miss Hamilton talk about the youth center. When children come to the center sometime and they're withdrawn, sometimes in the classroom, when they're withdrawn, they're not talking or they're aggressive. You don't know exactly what's going on in that home. But as time goes by, you begin to see the pattern. You know exactly that something is not right. So the more that you talk and the more that you can understand, you're able to empower and educate. So I was very excited to be on this panel and talk about domestic violence. And since I wrote my personal story and I also wrote a journal, I thought this was a very good time to discuss it. And given the trending headlines in our local news and our national news, domestic violence is trending now very heavily. So this is a very pertinent time to discuss the subject.
Yes, that's very true. You make a good point about it. It's trending right now, because I don't know if all of us by now got the opportunity to see the video of this very known hip hop mogul within the community that has been caught on video, being aggressive towards this young lady. So there was also some celebrities, I think it was Chris Brown and Rihanna at one time, who was like also trending for the same domestic violence. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what are some of the signs? What does domestic violence looks like? Because there's so many different levels or facades of domestic violence. And for me, for example, I didn't know that I was in a domestic violence household until I was in my 20s in a domestic violence shelter where they had mandatory meetings for the woman. And they had something called the cycle of abuse. It was a black and white cycle. And they went over everything. And I'm like, wow, I've been going through this all my life. So because I was in it, I didn't recognize that these were the symptoms or signs of being in domestic violence. So I want to spend some time now to talk about what does domestic violence look like? What are different types of domestic violence? And let's just start there. So, yeah, maybe you can help us out with that, Pastor. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the cycle of abuse. Is that still being used?
Yes, that a cycle is still being used because it's a pattern of when the abuser he abused you, and then he make all these excuses about I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do this, it's not going to happen again. You get showered, which is called the honeymoon cycle, and he give you all these gifts and constantly apologize for his behavior, and then you get caught up in that cycle. A few days pass, probably the abuse is not every day. It might be a stop for a while, but then it starts all over again. So that's why it's called a cycle, and it's the honeymoon cycle, because during that time you get all the gifts, the flowers, the apologies. I am so sorry. I'm not going to do this anymore. And then it all starts again. And also domestic violence, it can be physical, sexual, emotional, economical, and there are all types of abuse from different types of social economical backgrounds, because it's one of the myths that people think that only low income people are abused, but the cycle of abuse goes right across the board. It's just
Right.
we know about the people with low incomes, but people in high brackets, educated people, people with no education at all, and people with doctors and lawyers and professional people. They're all, the cycle affects them all. It does not discriminate.
That's right. And the people with the higher income people are better able to protect themselves. But quite often, that whole thing about it affecting the whole family is much more likely for a low income minority person to end up being involved with child protective services because of the original abuse of the parent. With child protective services, pretty much the case, once a case gets indicted, the mother is always the person that the case is in her name. And so that impact lasts so long, and it could end up with children being taken out of the home and put into foster care. So again, that's an extension of that abuse. And often, so I have not experienced abuse, but I have worked with the population for years. And for me, what I noticed is that one of the types, sometimes the abuser is an enabler also. So if the victim is somebody that is economically dependent, or if they are substance abusers and they are dependent on that person to supply the substances, they are connected in a way that they can't figure out a way to get themselves. And as you always saying, often you don't really know you're a victim. You just think that that's the relationship. So in my experience, as I worked with the population, often even if you could take the victim out of the situation, after a while, once they kind of get on their feet, they will call that person back they will get in touch with the abuser and start the relationship all over again. So those are the kind of things that you try to the point that you can educate the person as to what's really happening to them and what's really happening in their lives, and how it's not just going to impact them, but impact their children and their loved ones and the family. Often the family, the mother, the father, the sister, the brother, don't know how to help until they can get that person to understand what's really happening to them. And so it's, as Anna said, it's prevalent in our community, but it's across the board, across the economic spectrum, but it really impacts our communities the most. And it is cultural. Many cultures think that's the way it should be, and they don't think it's a crime. And the women think that it's their duty to bear that and not try to get themselves out of that situation.
Yes. So as you answered those questions about what does thank you, Sister Freddie, what does that look like as far as signs and symptoms, you also kind of touched on what are some common misconceptions about people, do have domestic violence, which was the classification of, you have to be poor. It's usually the poor. No, it's people in high places who are experiencing this too, with lots of money, and they have lots of money to cover it up. And most especially for the people who are in law enforcement, or maybe a detective, or they're I feel like they're really in a hard place, because even if they try to move on and get a second life, it feels like they have an inside connection to an investigator who could possibly investigate where this person tried to move on to. So it's really scary.
I had a family that actually had that situation. The woman was married to a detective, and he was determined to control whatever happened to her, with her and the son. Their dispute was always about a son who had a disability. And this woman was trapped in a situation that I probably shouldn't be saying this on on the air, but anytime I'm talking with a woman that's getting involved with the law enforcement, I tell them to be very careful and thoughtful about that situation, because they do protect each other. Law enforcement people do protect each other, and people there are victims of domestic violence who are married to judges, to law enforcement people, to politicians, to all kinds of people that they know that they really have to be strong enough to step out, because they can end up being very trapped in that situation and can't figure out a way out.
Wow, Sister Tioka, I was just talking with Angela before you got on, and I was just like, it took me 4 times. Like, I had to giggle when Sister Freddie said, some of them leave, they get their apartment, and then they go right back. Like, I called my children's father at the time and said, "Hey, I got my own place. You want to see what it looks like? What's going on? Somebody talk to me. What was that about? Like, what's that about? What's going on in that brain that makes us go right on back?"
I like that you brought that up, because there's a codependency that's happening. There's an addiction that's there, and there's a starvation for attention. But that's cultural, like Miss Freddie said. Our parents whipped us. Real talk. And in some cases, they whipped us and said, "It's because I love you." So when you're dealing with physical violence between a child and a parent, there are rules there. We call that child abuse. That's still domestic violence on a child. But that child grows up to think that the way that they get the attention or the love or what have you is being involved in this type of behavior, right? So whether they're bringing the violence or they're subjected to the violence, it's a justification that happens in their mind that this is normal because of culture. It's very unfortunate. Um, I think that you're not the only one um, that will do all the work to get on your feet, and the next thing you know, because there's some need to be with this person or to be with somebody that reach back out. That's when you get into that psychological violence or that social economic violence, where it's like the mental scars of dealing with the words that went, that goes on in these type of behaviors. They really break you down to make you think that you will be no one unless you're with me. That's violence. Or the social economic one is, not just the idea of, not having the money to sustain yourself, because there's so many programs out there. But when someone withhold, assets to keep you trapped, and or in some cultures, women not being able to be educated, so they're stuck, dependent, and then that's when the whole verbal abuse come in, like, you're not going to be anything if you try to go out there, nobody's here to save you. And then the breakdown in the family structure. Family don't like to get involved with domestic violence issues, just like the police don't like to get involved with domestic violence issues, because they think that just gonna go back to them anyway. So why waste all my time and energy and get all, ready to come in and sweep off and save you, and then, a couple of months later, you're back with the same person doing the same thing. So these are all these things that are part of this whole pool of domestic violence. And to be honest, the work that really needs to be done is on the person that is going through the abuse. Yes, the abuser needs work too, but as you're going through the abuse, someone needs to be there to let you see that it's abuse. And that's why I said this whole idea of having this podcast and opening up the conversation. Maybe it's somehow somebody is listening. They be like, "Oh wow, that's abuse. Oh wow, this man don't let me go to work. That's abuse, right? Oh wow, he blacked in my eye and then took me shopping the next day and on a shopping spree and apologized. Oh, that's abuse." There's so much mental health in our community.
Mm-hmm.
It is a contagion on every last one of us. So yeah, I mean, real talk, Sparkle, what you doing here? Like, we need to wake up the people, and to have a Sister Angela on that says there are resources. There are resources, and there are people who've gone through it and gone through it, like went through it and came out on the other side, and you can do it. Low self-esteem also plays a big part, right? Which is mental health. So the person who's codependent on an abuser is really having a mental health crisis.
Right. Yes.
Ooh, I don't know what to say. I'm listening.
Also, I would like to add, Sparkle, you talk about calling, the abuser back. And sometimes that is very common because, number one, you no one likes to be alone. At one point in your life, the relationship did not start out abusive. This was one time a person that you love, a person that you cared about you. You had a relationship with that person. So in the back of your mind, you're always hoping and believing that this person is going to change. That maybe this time, if I leave him, then maybe he will get the lesson. He would think, I'm serious about this thing. But it takes time. You can and we have to be a support mechanism with people who are going through that cycle, because it has to be on their own. And we have to offer the good advice to them. Let them know, I understand what you're going through, but I'm here to support you. And we also have to know when it's time for us to back up as a support, because domestic violence can be very dangerous. We see
Mm.
where the abuser would hurt anyone who is trying to support that person. And that's why a lot of times people back up from you. A lot of times, but no, I'm not getting involved with that, not me, because they are also in danger. And
Mm.
so many times they would turn on that person who is trying to help you. And I don't know if y'all saw the headlines. I believe it was last year sometime, and I believe it was the in the Maryland area where a judge was killed because he gave custody to a woman, and the abuser came back and shot him because he did not go in his defense. So it's very crucial, and we have to be very conscientious of that, because we can be in the midst of danger ourselves and trying to help someone. That's why we have to have the resources and knowing that if I can't help you, then I can refer you to someone who can help you. You sometimes, I've known situations where the abused woman came into someone else's home and she thought she was protecting them, but the abuser came and broke the windows and did serious harm to that person who was trying to assist. So that's why education is very important. We have to have the resources and know the best advice we can give and the best support that we can be for that individual.
Yes. Thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was going to ask, what are some of the biggest barriers that people in domestic violence face when trying to seek help or leave an abusive relationship? I think we touched on it, but I think the barriers of leaving, we mentioned shame, right? I think as one of them. I think you just mentioned fear of even a person getting involved. But what are some of the barriers? Let's talk about that. Like, is it all financial? Is it all that they got the person's mind? What does that look like?
I think it's a little of all of it. And am, is my mic on?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's a little of all of it. Because yes, there could be danger involved, but often not. But the person who's being abused have to have enough um, what I want to say agency as a person to feel like they can make it on their own, and to understand that when we talk about family not wanting to get involved, I've seen those situations. I've even been part of that kind of situation. So often an abuser will at first isolate the person that's being abused. And more, you don't see that person. They are kept from family gatherings. They are kept from interacting with friends. Um, they may even be kept from going to church or whatever it is um, that they like to do, where they would be socializing with other people. And so they find themselves isolated in a way that nobody knows what's going on. And then when you do see them, if there are signs of abuse, like they're wounded, they may have a black eye, or they couldn't go to work because they've been beaten up, and the scars are visible. They'll tell you something different that happened to cover for that person, when you know that probably they had been beaten. So the person the person that's being abused must at some point want that help. There's no other way that they're going to get it, because whether they are economically attached or emotionally attached or whatever it is, it's at a point where you have to feel like, I deserve not to have this happen to me, that this is abusive, and make that first step in terms of reaching out. Um, it can't happen otherwise, because um, people rushing in thinking that they're protecting that person.
That's right.
Often that person, even when the police get involved, when the people go to court, the victim will take back the the charges and just say, that was a mistake. It didn't happen. They will not even press charges against the person that abused them. So it's a mind thing. And again, it's for the it's for those of us who know about it to be able to offer enough hope that if they step away from it, they're going to have the support of somebody. And we're in a different era. For me, when I was younger, there was a sisterhood that happened where a sister that was trying to get away from somebody that was abusing them would have a sister community to help them out. I can't tell you how many times, me and other women have been able to be a support group for a sister that's trying to get away from a situation. I don't know if that happens anymore, but I think it should happen. I think that if we could build a community in a way that somebody trying to escape and rebuild their lives knew that there was somewhere they could go where not only the services that get paid to do it, but that the community is willing to surround that person and give them the support that they need to make that transition.
Here we are, listeners. Here we are. Anna, I would like to ask you, what can we do better as a community? How can we better support survivors of domestic violence? What do you think we can do?
I think we have to give space, hold space for them, right? Because everything that you guys are saying, right? I love because I think the theme was a need, right? They're trying to fill a need, right? That's where we're dependent or codependent on that other person, and it always comes. And this is why I love ACEs, adverse
childhood
experience, right? Because when you understand what has happened to you in your childhood, what needs weren't met, right? That when you get older, you overcompensate, right? Our subconscious mind takes over. There's certain things that our minds does to protect us from not remembering things. So we're kind of functioning out of this sort of like subconscious way of living, not understanding ourselves. So talking about it, right? Having these support groups, holding space. I honestly think that having leading experts coming in, right? Having a community conference where we're actually talking, not because I've been in jobs where we'll have people like speakers come in and the professionals get the information. So we're all pumped up, but that information just stays there. It's not to the community. The community doesn't understand what's happening. And so we have to bring in experts specifically to talk to the community members, not professionals. I mean, they can come in and be a part of it, but to them, because they need the information, because I don't feel that enough is being done to give them that information, especially when it comes to healing, right? Understanding self. Why do I keep going back? What need is this person fulfilling? What need do I have that I can't? Because you can fulfill your own needs, right? Understanding what gaslighting does to you, right? Like one of the symptoms, isolation, because they isolate you. I've been in an abusive relationship, which could have probably gone into a domestic relationship. But isolating, understanding what that does. Also understanding the impact that it has on children. I think it's information, right? It's holding space, is getting supporters who want to support the community. And I'm talking about real supporters that want to be able to make a change. And like you're saying, rebuilding the village, right? Because we need a village. I don't know if I can, I mean, other than these sisters here, right? I can go to somebody and be like, I'm having this issue. I came here from the Bronx, in 2019. So I'm still learning the area, but I can see where there's lack. I'm trying to find, and it's like, what's happening? And I think that maybe there are people who are also looking, but they can't. They're not finding, especially when they don't look like us, right?
Right.
We need people who look like us, who understand our struggle, to to be able to support us. So,
because we can help people get out of town. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? If somebody is serious, we can put together some dollars. So if you go to a service, you have to go through the routine, right? You have to become a number. They have to know your name. They have to do the investigation. It's like it's a fear factor because now you are turning yourself over to some people who might not really care about what's going on with you. But if it's the community, if you say, well, I have to get out of town for a few months, right? We can put together those dollars and help them go to a relative or whatever needs to happen if we all care, you know. And like you said, Anna, you have to give people space because sometimes we are actually looking at family. I actually look at situations where I fear that there's something going on there that there needs to be some help, but I'm not going to step into it until I'm asked, right? I just leave it alone, do the best I can for the kids, make sure when the kids are with us that they are safe and happy. And you have to give the space until that person comes to the realization themselves that they need the help. And so for us to be on the alert that, yeah, we can do that. You can come to a space where you can get immediate help and not help 3 or 4 or 5 months from now. And that's what I would like to see our community be able to provide.
I like to add to that because y'all mentioned space, and I just think about safe spaces. We have to become safe spaces for people as well.
Yes, that's right.
That they can actually come to us, even if they're not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
They just need a sounding board,
Mm-hmm.
and the creation of with that sounding board creates an opportunity, which I like to call a teachable moment.
Mm-hmm.
So Sister Freddie, when you're saying, we should have, we can figure it out. We can,
Yes.
a sister circle, sister community, all that you're talking about. Those are spaces where people can come in, and maybe some indirect talking is happening. I
Mm-hmm.
know that I'm pretty sure it happens. In church, where
Mm-hmm.
if there's a known situation that is happening with someone in someone's life, that there should be a letter, note, or something slipped to the pastor, the reverend, or
Mm-hmm.
whomever who
Mm-hmm.
is over the flock, where they can use that as a teachable moment and pour into them from the rostrum. Or
Right.
if there's a a woman's circle where someone else care enough to say, hey, sister so and so, I don't want to tell her business, but
Mm-hmm.
you may want to speak a little bit on X, Y, and Z, because there's some things going on that she's not telling us or talking about, to talk into what she's going through, so that that person can I feel like there's a safe space, and have an opportunity to talk about what it is that they're going through. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I thought about when you were saying, the sister circle, or the group of women. And, I'm very thankful that I actually have that, um, as far as the sister group that I'm a part of, but I'm also striving very hard to be that.
Right.
That even though it's not a large community here, we don't have to
Mm-hmm.
put no label, no title, no nothing to it. I mean, we're
Right.
women, and we go through this stuff, and we need each other. So
That's right.
I'm trying to be that safe space for women, because I know what that looks like.
Absolutely.
And I've been in situations that at the time I did not know that it
Mm-hmm.
was domestic violence, but I
Mm-hmm.
grew to understand that it was,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it makes you hard, and it makes you
Yeah.
distrust people,
Yeah.
you know, as
Yeah.
you going through this. It really, and even just witnessing as a child, it makes
Right.
you distrust people,
Mm-hmm.
always on guard, because that's abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you don't trust that you're going to be safe, so I just wanted to add on, as far as the sister group, or the sister circle.
The sister circle is so powerful. And I say to people all the time, So we're getting some feedback, right?
Yes, I hear it.
Yeah. The sister group is so powerful, and of course, I came from New York City, from Brooklyn, but I would always say when I was there, I could easily name 100 women that I know for a fact wouldn't let anything happen to me. Whatever it was that I could depend on, and they could depend on me. Whatever it was, if the sister called out and said, I need help with this, that, and the other, even if it wasn't domestic violence, we need to have that strong support of each other. And it makes such a difference. And, I would love to see that happening right here. That when we need each other, we can just put out the word. Other cultures can do that, right? No, they can just put out the word. I need so and so and so, I need help with this, that, and the other. And we just come forward with it, because when each one of us make our little contribution, that makes it happen.
Also, we can, Sister Mohammed, she spoke about the congregation and being
Mm-hmm.
um spreading it to our congregations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes that becomes difficult
Mm-hmm.
because the leader in itself is an abuser.
Right.
I don't know how many of you have ever
That's true.
experienced that, but
Mm-hmm.
abuse in the religious circles
Mm-hmm.
is quite high. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, because he's that main person and everyone looks up to them, they don't even listen to the woman. They always think, well, what did you do to upset him now?
Mm-hmm.
If you just behave this way, or you don't say anything, or you act in a certain way, then, that would occur.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that we need to know who in the community we can reach out to. When I
Mm-hmm.
came to Utica, I did not know anyone in this city.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
did not know who I could reach out to if I needed help. It was
Mm-hmm.
just me and my three children. But
Mm-hmm.
as time went by and being affiliated with the church, then I began to know certain people. But
Mm-hmm.
there have to be that trust.
Yes.
Your sister need to know that they
Mm-hmm.
can trust you. And
Yes.
there are some people that um they're not going to help you. They judge you. They tell you, girl, you're a fool. You should leave. You should do this. All kinds of mixed information.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to know that sometimes everybody is not going to come to you right away. But you
Mm-hmm.
got to just be there to encourage them.
Yes.
Sometimes you can the situation, you see it, you can identify with it because you've been that person at one time in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But it took courage and it took time for you to open up about your abuse. I did not tell anyone about my abuse for years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why my mother, I never even told her what I was going through or what I went through. And that's why I wrote about it after, in
Mm-hmm.
order to help someone else who may find themselves in that position, who don't feel like I can voice this, because domestic violence puts you in a place in your mind. If you're not strong, you will not make it,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
because
Mm-hmm.
that's how deep it's like. What the abuser do to you is like what they do in a training camp. They tell you the same thing every day. They tell you you're no good. Nobody's going to look at you. You're ugly. They judge you. They criticize you. They put you down. So your mind, that after a while, when you hear a certain thing every day, you begin to believe that yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to know. You have to tell yourself, I'm not that person. And
Mm-hmm.
every woman is not strong
Mm-hmm.
to leave that situation. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a very strong will, and you got to know that you have that support around you. Be there for that individual. Let them know I'm aware of what's going on. If you want to talk about it, that's fine. When you get ready, I'm here. When you get
Mm-hmm.
ready to leave, I'll support you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you need, I'll be here for you. And if you need, call me whatever time. Call the phone. Sometimes you may not want to leave, but just having a voice, just having someone to just talk to you, understand where you are at that point, and also will help ease the pain of that abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't be judgmental.
No, no, because you don't know what's going on in that home.
Absolutely.
You
That's
don't
right.
know what is going to cause that woman to be even abuse more. If you, you should stand up to him, which sometimes people get crazy at that. Oh, you should fight back. Sometimes you're setting up that woman to be killed because the abuser, when you try to fight back with them, the sight of blood drive them insane. The mere fact that you're trying to retaliate against them, it sets a different type of signal in their brain because they are already in a rage. So you have to go through very easy and give proper advice. I am here for you. I will support you. If you have to get an order of protection, maybe you don't know how to do that. I'll go through the steps for you. I'll be there for you. I'll go to the court with you. I'll make myself available for you to assist you and support you until you are ready. Because we can teach, we can talk. It's up to that woman when she get ready, and she'll know when it's time for her to leave.
Whew. Yes, because so I just want to acknowledge some comments from Jakisha Breland Kirkland. She says, "Peace and blessings to everyone." That's from Facebook. She's listening and watching from Facebook, and she also put financially, most definitely, and also Aaliyah Makael watching from Facebook Live. She says, "Peace and blessings to us." So I just wanted to acknowledge the people who are listening from other platforms who are watching us. So, because the first thing that I was thinking about is that some of us actually die and perish spiritually in these relationships, and some of us may never leave, because when we try to leave, or maybe we don't even feel worthy of us leaving, like what are we going to do if it's financially, for example, right? And the guy is, or the girl, or the family is supplying your every need, and you don't have any skills, or you don't have any education, or you don't have just any know-how on how to navigate. If you've been secluded from friends, family, if you've been secluded from having a social life, you're not educated. Like, some of us just stay because we don't really think that there's a way out, that we will be self-sufficient enough to survive without our abuser, or if we just stay too long, it's easier to stay some cases, right? So that's what I was thinking about. But maybe for those of us who are strong enough to leave, because let's take, for example, because we said there was different types of domestic abuse. What if it's a child in a family and CPS never gets called, or social services never intervene, or the neighbors never, they always turn a blind eye. They hear you getting cursed out or fussed out and beat up, but they don't say anything, I guess I want to ask you, Angela, what is the probability, or is it a higher occurrence? Do you see that people or children who are in domestic violence family, who grow up in domestic violence family, do they end up in domestic violence abusive relationships themselves, or do they become the abuser? Is there any research that shows that? I'm guessing that might happen, but is that an actual fact?
That is actual fact, and there are statistics and reports to support that, because abuse is a learned behavior, and most of the times, especially with our young boys, that's why we have to educate them at an early age. If they see the father abused the mother very early, that's in their mind, so they think that behavior is okay, that's something. So they in themselves, they grow up, unless they're given the right information, the right structure, they grow up thinking that that is the way they're supposed to treat a woman, or that's the way that they have the power over the woman. Because sometimes that is like I believe it was Anna, the culture teach them that this is the way you control a woman, is that you beat her, you take power over her, she's not equal to you. So, and in a lot of cases, that behavior is a learned behavior, and it's passed on if not dealt with and educated, redirect, and refocus.
That's exactly what I was about to say, Pastor, is that it's a control issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the tool that is used to control is physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological violence. We want to say I'm going to say specifically violence, physical violence. Okay, it's a method of control. Verbal violence, psychological violence, sexual violence, and social economic violence. It is a method of controlling an individual.
Yeah.
And
But you know, there's no.
unfortunately, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, it is a cultural thing, and it also stems from slavery. This is
Right.
the way that we were controlled as a whole people to get
Mhm.
free labor for
Mhm.
over 379 years. I mean, free labor by whipping us, by
Mhm.
sexual violence, and 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 that damage is runs so deep in us that when we see it in people that we believe love us, we're confused.
Mhm.
We're confused. We confuse it with love.
Mhm.
We confuse it with care, but in reality, it is a method of control. Make you think that you are no one without me. Make you think that you can't do anything without me. It's control.
A part of what is perplexing to me is that most of us would do anything to protect our children or to give our children the best chance that they can have, uh, to live up to their maximum potential. We just want our kids to be successful. And so it appears that sometimes even when somebody cannot um, bump up to enough self-esteem to take care of themselves, they can see the damage that's being done to their children, and they are willing to put up a fight for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it also depends on our level of consciousness, because I can remember a client that I had back in Brooklyn, and the story was that her relationship, even though she was being abused, her children were being abused. And the relationship she had was that she had some children that were her children before she got into this relationship with the man that was the abuser. So she had children before her relationship with him, and then she had children with him, and he was an abuser of her and the children, the earlier children. And when my agency started working with her, she said to me, when we talked about the man abusing her daughter, she said to me, well, he doesn't abuse me. Basically, she was saying that as long as he could beat up the kid, it gave her some relief.
Hmm.
And so, but this was the same woman who at one point asked me what were values. And she had about 8 kids. She said, what are values? And so when we started discussing values, what mattered to her family, she said, oh, well, my kids asked me what were values, and I told her we didn't have any. So when you are dealing with, at the point that we have that level of consciousness, the question is, where do we start? You know, where do we, how do we get that person to the point that, because everybody that has kids is not really a mother. So the question is, how do we get that person to a point that no matter what kind of abuse they're willing to take, if they're satisfied with it, how do we get them to the point that they want the very best for their children?
That's where I think about what they want for themselves, right?
Right,
Because those are your kids, right? These
right,
are your faces.
right,
So if she can't defend herself,
right.
she won't be able to advocate for her children, and that's where the deep healing has to start within, because what's the quote, I just wrote it down. Our inner world reflects our outer world.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
What we believe we deserve, we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have in the outer world.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a video on YouTube that talked about trauma, and it talked about essentially when what has been deposited in you as a child, if it
Mm-hmm.
was violence and abuse and all these programming, right? That you're nothing, you won't be nothing without me. And that's like if you go into like family system, the enmeshment that happens
Mm-hmm.
in families where this child is not able to form its own identity. So it has to always think about the other person and what they're feeling, and never to fulfill their need. And then you grow up, and then you're not even in your body. You're not even a person in a sense, because
Right.
you don't even know who you are without these people in your system. And that when you have kids, you won't be able to recognize your children because you can't even recognize yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so deep, when we talk about these things, when we talk about healing, because it's healing the self, mind, body, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So if the mind and body, that's how you break us, right? There's a book, right? How to break the spirit of a Negro,
That's right.
right?
Yes.
How do we how have they done that? Like Tilka was saying, slavery for 400
Right.
years. How many generations? Because
Mm-hmm.
it was at 12 years old. That's when
Mm-hmm.
they turned 12.
Mm-hmm.
These Black young girls, they started raping them to make more babies, to make them,
Mm-hmm.
to be working in the system. So how many generations were there within generations? So it's such a deep, deep, deep healing that needs to happen within the root of humanity,
Right.
that it has to take that person to be like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I deserve better.
Mm-hmm.
I deserve to be loved. And sometimes you have to go through things, right? I do believe that God puts you in situations to learn certain
Mm-hmm.
things and to depend on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
To look for him. So it's so deep. And the society has gone away from spiritual practices. It's just like a whole different, which is what we're seeing today in this
Mm-hmm.
world, and things are coming out to light. But yeah, until that person says enough is enough, until that person understands the impact that that's doing to that child, um, and this is why I think education is important, and ACEs are so important, because you understand the neurological, like the neurons that are happening, and how this person is seeing the same thing all the time, and that's the only thing that they know, and that's what they're going to attract. You're going to attract exactly what you feel. If you feel like you ain't nobody, that that you're the scum of the earth, and all these things that have been programmed within you, that's what you're going to keep attracting, until again those frequencies changes, those thoughts changes, when you have to choose your thoughts, right? You got to, and that's where meditation comes in, right? These tools, mindfulness comes in. That's when you can go within and touch your heart and feel your heartbeat and feel that, remember yourself in the womb, right? Remember that you're a person, remember that you have intention, that you will be here for a purpose. And those are the type of deep healings that this society needs, especially women, especially us, because we are the are the bearers. There was a quote that says, when you educate a man, you educate an individual, but when you educate a woman, you educate a nation.
You're right.
Right? Because
Absolutely.
mom is teacher, right? Like I'm the one that teaches my kids, like this and that. I'm learning financial literacy. As soon as they turn, well, I mean, I'm teaching them now, but everything that I'm learning, I'm also passing down to them. So the things are being deposited, right? So we have to unlearn some of the things that we have been taught as women in this society. We have to reprogram ourselves, reparent ourselves. But again, it takes that self-awareness, but that knowledge, like we were talking about, that education that needs to be imparted in our community.
So the reason I brought it up is when Tioka mentioned the trauma of slavery. I know that that's what it is. The question is, because those of us who are talking right now, we know these things that we're talking about, right? But in order to do this work, because that's what we do, I want to do the work. And I do the work, but I'm always so perplexed as to how do I get into the consciousness of that person and have them understand what has been done to them. What are the repercussions of generations of slavery that we still carry in our minds and in our bodies? And how do we get our consciousness to the point where it's even an issue? How do we make that breakthrough? I know a lot of it is just talking and making the space. And I think a part of why our oppressors make sure we usually don't have a space where we could all gather is because knowing that we have a space that we can gather and work through these things empowers us. But once we get the people there, it's so hard to make that penetration. Like, think about this, think about your history, think about what has happened, think about what has brought you to this point where you wouldn't even know whether you have values or not. Is the challenge. That's the challenge, right?
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
I just want to add, first of all, Sister Freddie, that's so deep and so real. That's why I'm such a big history buff. Like my children, as far as part of our curriculum, as a homeschool mother, is we watch Roots every year. And even though this is a depiction, right? It's a teachable moment. And some would say that, you keeping it alive, by keep showing your children these images, that you're putting fear in them. But I don't believe so. I believe I'm putting awareness. I believe that wasn't that long ago.
That's right.
And on a subconscious level, we're still suffering from it. And we're suffering from it even more so now that we don't, folks don't want to talk about it because that was so long ago. Folks don't want to take the responsibility of benefiting from it and keeping us in a status that will say that we're still in need of some type of overseer. I think we have to take charge of our history. I think it should come from us. Because I think that we're the most ones that are qualified to talk about what had happened to us. And I think it needs to be talked about. One reason is because things that are not talked about becomes part of your fear. It becomes like an innate fear where you become reactive. You start to be on guard, because things look familiar. But things that are talked about, it goes into your memory bank where you're able to actually analyze it and analytically look at it and say, well, this happened because this happened because this is happening, and I can gain control over that. So I think there should be some way for us to talk about this stuff, to show the timeline and to show what has happened to us as a people and what is happening to us as a people, because of those conditions. The other thing I wanted to speak on was, Sister Sparker, you talked about, what happens with the children. Now, I grew up in an abusive household. So I know that the children are from a child mind, what happens is you're trying to create the atmosphere that brings about peace. So as you watch this ups and downs with your parents or with your parent and another, and it's a constant fight that makes you sick. It makes you very fearful. So in your mind, in a child mind, they want to figure out what can they do to make it so that they would stop arguing. And in some cases, from a child eye, you're looking at it. You're like, well, I know that when mom and dad is on drugs, that they don't argue that much. So maybe if I can create that scenery, or I know if the house is clean, they don't argue. All these things that goes on in the child mind, then they grow up to be adults.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what are they doing as a child? They're making excuses for the reason why this violence is happening in their life, in their homes. So they grow up to be adults that make excuses for the reason why the violence is going on in their home. So when a man come home from work and he's, ready to fight and whatever, it's their fault. It's their fault. Maybe they didn't look good enough, or maybe they didn't keep the house clean enough, or maybe the children are, but all not one time, or it takes time for a person to get to the point to say, no, there's something wrong with this individual.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to give that child perspective, because I do have a history of growing up like that. And then what happens to the child is they do become very insecure and worried that they're doing something wrong all the time that's causing somebody else to be dissatisfied. And then I'm a firm believer that there's two types. There's one type that will succumb and just kind of like repeat it. I'm a generational curse breaker in my family. Like not up in here, like it's over. And I'm very thankful for my spiritual sojourn that got me to that point, to say that I don't have to continue to um function from such a fearful low place, that I can hold on to the handle that never break, and I'm okay with that, and if you ain't holding on to, then I'm sorry, you're gonna get off this ride, because um but I mean, I know that it's either you're gonna succumb to the environment, or you're gonna fight like hell to not be a victim. That's me.
So I have a couple of more questions. I won't hold you ladies for too much longer. But the one question is, in what ways can individuals, let's see, okay, in what ways can individuals advocate for policy changes or initiatives to address domestic violence on a broader scale? And before we go into numbers and resources that people could contact today, I wanted to ask Angela, what advice would you give someone who suspects that a friend or family member is experiencing domestic violence? Like, what would be the best way to go about that? But before we answer that question, I want to know in what ways can individuals advocate for policy changes or initiatives to address domestic violence on a broader scale? I'm looking at you, Sister Freddie, for that one. How can individuals advocate for policy changes or initiatives to address domestic violence on a broader scale?
I don't have an answer for that, because we kind of got into the weeds of this in terms of community-based solutions.
Yes.
And I think community-based solutions are the key. There are laws and policies that exist, and every year there are more laws piled on top of existing laws, right? So recently, this year actually, a law was passed that allowed a woman who killed her abuser, because in the past, no matter what the person had done that couldn't be brought up in court as a reason that you defended yourself. And if in fact that person died, you were just a murderer. But the circumstances that brought you to that point could not be brought up in court to be used as a part of your defense. So the governor, my understanding, the governor and the legislature just vacated that rule. And this particular woman that they've been showing for the last few days is going to now have an opportunity to have a new trial, so that the things that happened to her that led to this unfortunate incident can be brought up in court. So every year, our legislators, our elected officials look at these issues and make tweaks to them or change the law based on new information. But it always takes once somebody is trying to get help for themselves through the government, it's always a process that is probably very difficult to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And for our people, for people of color, when you start to talk about uh, the trauma that we've experienced, often we end up just not being able to even verbalize what is happening to us when we're talking to other people. You know, when we're talking, a lot of times when we're talking to white folks, they don't know what we're saying. And often we don't know how to have a conversation with them. Some of our people have never had a one-on-one conversation with with the white person. So um, there are ways to get help, and I think Reverend Carter knows all of them. So actually, all of us are all of us that do this kind of work uh, legally are are supposed to be reporters of certain things,
Mm-hmm.
and we certainly can give people information about who to who to approach about a domestic violence issue, even law enforcement, you know. Um, but I think that the actual solution is for us to become a more cohesive community and actually be able to, even if it's stopgap services, even if we are providing help pending uh, people being able to get help through the system. But there are many laws that are supposed to protect and support victims of domestic violence.
Thank you.
I have a question about that circle. What do we know that is the policy of the law enforcement when they're called to a home dealing with domestic violence? Do we know?
I
When
know, I know that law enforcement, they pretty much use their own instincts around this. And so if the person who's experiencing it, if they call law enforcement to the home and the person who's experiencing it wants to press charges, if there's been a physical altercation, if they have been beaten and there's a physical there's evidence of a physical altercation, law enforcement and the person who was beaten press charges, law enforcement can take that person out of the household at that moment. Otherwise, I hear law enforcement say they went in and they advised the person who was the abuser to leave, or they can advise the person who's being abused to leave. So they're basically asking them to separate themselves so that nothing more happens right at that moment. So these are the words that law enforcement share with us. These are the techniques that they use. But if they go into the household and the person refuses to press charges, or if there's a bench warrant and the person that was abused go to court and withdraw the accusation, then law enforcement can't do any more with it. They can't do any more about it.
Hmm.
So I guess my question would be like, are we satisfied with that? And is there something as a community that we can do like some type of sensitivity training or advisement on, maybe a better tactic? So I guess my mind thinks like this, usually these domestic violence situations is from a man to a woman, not in all cases, but in most cases.
Mhm.
And we talked about throughout the show about how women are isolated and how, you know, uh, they don't have anyone. Like they're codependent on this individual. Um, I wonder if there's a way for us to talk about what it would look like to have a law enforcement agency who protects and serves and actually shows that by making their presence known, maybe for a protracted amount of time after a domestic violence call. And what it would look like in my brain is um, domestic violence is called to a person's house. they get there, the person is there, it's evident that there was an argument, there was some abuse there. They usually tell a man to take a walk, right? That's just take a walk. That there's a conversation that's had with the law enforcement, with the abuser, the alleged abuser, that you're gonna have to seek counseling, right? And either come into court, and that court is going to set you up with counseling. But then there's a follow up where maybe it's a part of their beat, or their rounds that they do, that they actually for a whole month knock on the door of those who have been the victim and just say, is everything okay in here? How's things go? Okay, we're just checking in. You look at the woman and say, are you okay? Do you need anything? Look at the guy and say, how are things going with your counseling? Everything is good. Have you been able to work on that anger you got going on? Just let you know that we're checking on you. This is just my mind, the way it works. Like, I think that would bring about not necessarily a fear, but maybe a fear on the abuser, but a sense of what we're seeing that these women don't have, is that they have some sort of protection or some type of care given to them, that they're not alone, and that if they do make that decision that enough is enough, that they will be able to walk away and be safe and be, with some concerned individuals in the community, in law enforcement. So
That's a really good point. I know in New York City, they had a domestic violence unit. When I was going through that, it's because it's such a big city. They had just a domestic violence unit just to deal with domestic violence calls. I'm not sure if we have that in the Utica Police Department or not. But I like that. I like that. Just following up for at least 30, 60, or maybe even 90 days after, just to do a wellness check,
And there probably should be a sensitivity training too, because what you do experience with law enforcement is that they don't have the experience in dealing with us and what we go through in our community. That's why we've had those sensitivity training. I know Brother Patrick, may Allah be pleased with him, he was a part of that. That the whole sensitivity training that needed to be had. But you said a domestic violent unit. That means that the people that's on that unit should be trained in how to deal with people who are going through this. What's the psychological damage that is happening? What is happening with these people? Because sometimes, you know, because we're all human, sometimes we take this stuff personally. Like, that you get up, this is another call again. She just needs to leave, or he just needs to, where it's not, that it's not taken like as if it's like the situation, the person is in peril because they've been called so many times. So I like that what you said, and so that's my idea. If I had an opportunity, that's what I would suggest.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So back to you, Pastor Angela. What advice would you give to someone who suspects that a friend or family member is experiencing domestic violence? And while you're saying that, I'm putting up the national hotline for domestic violence. As you tell us, what advice would you offer someone who suspects that a friend or family member is experiencing domestic violence?
We're very good at covering up our views. So what you have to let your friend know, I'm aware of what is going on with you. I see what is happening to you. And make them aware that you know what they're going through. You're there to support them. You're there to help them. Don't force them to leave that situation, but let them know there's help for them. The support mechanisms that are there for you. Let them know that I'm here when you're ready to talk. I'm here when you want to discuss what's happening to you. You can also refer them to get counseling, get help. Do not force them to leave the situation. They have to do it on their own. But let them know the steps that they have to take. A safety plan. Do you have a safety plan in place? And that may be having your documents in order in the event that you have to leave in the middle of the night. Do you have your passport together? Do you have the social security, birth certificate? Those items that are going to take time to replace, you can have those items set aside in a place in the event that you have to leave. Um, you can also educate yourself so you know what advice to give them. And also, if their life in such a danger, you can encourage them to file an order of protection. They may feel like there's nothing they can do, but you can sometimes you have to just walk them through the steps. You might have to fill out the information for them, and let them know that that is something they can do. And always be in a position to help them. Let them know that you're not judging them, you're not looking down on them, but you understand exactly where they are in the process. So you continue to encourage them and be that support. Sometimes you are the only support that they have. You may ask them, invite them when if they have any type of free time because they're so isolated, this might not be possible, but let them know, can I take you for a walk? Can we go to the library? Can we do something different? Sometimes you may have to give them financial support, to give them some things that they may not have access to. And as females, I've heard females talk about where they had no finance at all, where there were certain things they needed. They didn't have any kind of money because they were so dependent on the abuser. So as a support, you can every now and again bless them, let them know, give them your phone number. This is my contact information. You may also, if they're in the process of making a plan, you can also let them know, there are certain codes. So if you use this code, I know that you're in danger. If you use this code, I know that you need immediate assistance. And they can let where you are at all times, that in the event that you need, sometimes you may have to get away, you don't have enough time, but if you are right there, you can be that support mechanism for them until they make the step to permanently go away, leave that situation.
Wow. Thank you. Um, so the number is 1-800-799-7233 for the national hotline for domestic violence. If you would like to text, you can text the word begin to number 88788. That is for the national hotline for domestic violence. You would text the word begin to the number 88788. We also shared some local information in the comments for the local YWCA. The number should be there. And that number is area code 315-732-2159. The local rescue mission. They have a domestic violence unit. That's extension 2100. Telephone number 315-735-1645. And for the JCTOD, who also has a domestic violence unit, 315-734-9608. I just want to thank everybody here for listening and tuning in. And I want to ask all our panelists today, before we close out, do you have any last closing remarks? Things that you want to say, ways that people can contact you or may contact you later? The floor is open for you.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
I guess what I want to ask you all to, how can we encourage survivors, people who have left domestic violence? How can we encourage them to prioritize? How can we encourage them to prioritize their own self-care and healing? And besides the ways that I mentioned, what are some other support networks or resources would you recommend for them? Other than the one we mentioned. So What advice would you encourage survivors to prioritize for their own self-healing? And what are some other ways you would recommend for someone to gain support or resources who is currently experiencing domestic violence?
I don't know that I have any more to offer. I'm honored that I was asked to participate in this. It's been very, very good. And, I guess last words would be, um, spirituality is the key, really. If uh, I like to say to people, to get in touch with the God of your understanding, whatever we are all connected to spirit. And when we take the time to um, to foster those connections, to make sure that we are, um, because spirit speaks to us if we're listening. And so when you can take the time to meditate, to pray, however way you get in touch, um, if you make one step, I promise you the spirit will make two or three, and you will make that connection. And that's the power. That's the power. Um, and so I would encourage people to take the time to do that for themselves. And that's the greatest gift that anybody can give to themselves.
Amen. Amen. I would come in agreement with Miss Freddie that we have an advocate with the Father, and however your spirituality is, one of the things that work for me is pray, and that's a very powerful tool. And when you cannot talk to anyone else, but you can talk to your heavenly Father, the higher power, that person that you trust. And I would also like to say thank you for having me. I would also like to invite our listeners to purchase my books. Amen. I wrote one book. The first one is Letters to My Mama, All the Things I Never Said. And this is the second book, which is a journal. And I find that journaling is very helpful. So this is a book that you can purchase, AngelaUcarter.com. It's on Amazon, and you can also contact me at that email address. And I thank you. I will also like to say thank you to my daughters, Cassandra, Melissa, and Angela, who was tuned in. Thank you.
Yes, they were tuned in. And I have a question about Letters to My Mama, All the Things I Never Said, which you said can be purchased at AngelaUcarter.com. I actually put that up right there so everyone can see. When you say Letters to My Mama, All the Things I Never Said, could you tell me what's that about? Like, is that because you didn't tell her, like you mentioned earlier?
Because I never told her. And when I wrote the book, I wrote it for people who was actually going through a domestic violence, and I wanted to share my story with them. But I did it in form of letters, and I addressed these individual letters to my mother.
Oh, okay. And then the journal is pretty much blank. Everyone has to fill that in.
The journal is for women who have voices, who wanted to tell their story or write about it, but didn't have the courage to talk about it. And there are prompts in here in the journal, as you can see it, that will assist you in different first emotions, letters to yourself, events. All of those are prompts in there that you can start just journaling things in.
Okay. All right.
This will be your personal tool.
Journal.
This is part of the healing process. If you can just, when you write about it, it brings about some form of healing.
I read Letters to My Mama, and it's very, very engaging.
Thank you.
It keeps you reading, read all the way through, and it was very good.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, I also purchased the book. I just didn't start reading it yet. So I didn't want to wave that all around like I purchased the book.
Thank you.
Okay. Last and certainly not least, Sister Tioka.
Yes, ma'am. So I want to purchase the book. So my my ending was, you asked the question, what would you say to someone that have survived it, right? Um, I would say, don't forget what you went through, because that's where the power lies. As you went through it and you overcame. Remember all the things that you went through. Don't let it be a, a scar or a wound. Let it be, a lesson, because in every lesson there's a blessing, right? And as you remember what you've gone through, remember the pain, remember the times when you didn't know anything, when you wasn't sure, when you didn't trust, when you thought you was going to get out of it, and then think about someone else that could be going through the same exact thing. And so become that advocate. Even if it's just with one or two people, even if it's just with a child that you happen to run into, that you see is closed and you figure that maybe something is happening, that you need to talk into their situation, take that opportunity as a teachable moment. Share your story. Why? Because it's your story. Can no one do anything with your story but learn from it? Like you, Sister Carter, sharing that story will free the minds of so many women who thought it was just them that was going through the hardship. So that's what I would say to anyone that has survived, because it is survival, a
Yes.
domestic violence situation. And I too am very thankful that I was a part of this conversation. I hope that, we get a lot of share power. We need to share. Other people need to hear. Other
Yes.
people need to see that you can survive this. As a child, as an adult, you can't. There is help out there, because there's community members that care, that are trying to figure out, how can I be of service to you? How can I show you that you can count on me, and I can be that person to help you through these dark times. So thank you for letting me be a part of that.
Absolutely. And with the support of my sisters who is here right now, which is Sister Tioka, Pastor Angela Carter, Sister Freddie Hamilton, join me in my heart cry for whoever's listening to this today to keep listening until you feel the courage to call that number. Feel inspired. Keep listening to this podcast. Keep listening to certain lines of certain people. Let it penetrate your minds. That's my cry from my heart to yours. I'd say it if I finally left after 7 times of not going back. I think that you can do too. You can leave too. Join us on the healing side of things. Healing is not easy, but it helps. It helps put the mind at ease. Join us. Join your sisters on this other side. Join your brothers on this other side. Join all of us as we start to heal. You can heal from it. Um, just do it. Just one day, just do it. And if it helps you, just know that there are agencies that are there, that if you feel like you need to change your name, they can legally change it for you, and you will be relocated without any notice of your abuser. If you need to change your social security number or your social security number of your children or any one of your loved ones, they can do that for you. It's a kind of witness protection system going on. As long as you have the documentations, people can actually help you with those documentations. So you can change your social security number. You can change your identity. So you don't have to jump over here on the healing side and be who you are if you're afraid that something might happen to you. So there are services out there that you can legally change your name free of charge. You can legally change your social security number free of charge. So please join me on the other side of healing, so you can, gain your life back again, or whatever's left of your life back. So just do it. Just do it. We are here for you. Thank you all for listening, and good night. This is Reality Speak TV. Our slogan is real people, real talk, and real time. Good night. Until next time.
Good night.
Thank you.